The next speaker is Mahnaz Ghezelloo, an ex-political prisoner, a researcher and human rights activist on the woman question and children. She has an MA in executive management. She has done research in comparing Sharia and human rights legislations and the Jakarta principles, on international human rights work on LGBT issues, and comparing the Iranian criminal and penal code and the LGBT community work, and preparing human rights work, preparing radio programs in Sweden, doing a lot of interviews with a lot of human rights media, and also making documentaries. Ms. Ghezelloo has worked on, she will speak on the question of LGBTs in Iran. Thank you. One of the questions that in Iran can sometimes be created with cultural or government work has been the question of LGBT and queer people in Iran and their breaking of their rights. It is faced with silence by media. Sometimes it's because of the lack of information on the issue, and then because of the homophobic laws that exist. The queer people in Iran are suffering discrimination, even though that for a long time homosexuality is not considered a disease or a psychological issue, and in the Jakarta principles on human rights conventions around the world is recognized. In Iran, unfortunately, because of a lack of information and lack of a free communication with the modern world, and because of censorship and filtering of internet and the lack of freedom of speech, homosexuality is seen as a social taboo, and even criminally it is considered a crime. Iran denies usually the existence of homosexuals, or it just sees it as a deviation, as a sin, as a sickness, or a unforgivable crime that deserves execution. Even in academic fields, this is the same kind of thing happens, and the materials use a very outdated, inhuman approach. Despite the fact that Iran has signed many human rights conventions, this does not mean that the country is obligated. I mean, it does mean that Iran is obligated to do it, but it doesn't mean that it does. Based on Islamic penal code, which is the main Iran code in Iran, homosexuality is seen as a crime. Homosexuals can be arrested, they can be lashed, 60 lashes, and after 4 times of receiving this, they can be executed, killed. The LGBT people, because of fear of persecution and harassment, are forced to hide their identity from their families and from society. Based on cultural homophobia, the officials in Iran have repeatedly denied the existence of gays and lesbians and bisexuals in Iran. As a result, there is any sort of a legal right for homosexuals to exist has been denied to them. We have to not forget at the same time that if a woman is homosexual in Iranian society is a double challenge. Why? Because women's rights in Iran are generally denied in Iran. A lesbian will have more complicated challenges. A lesbian will not only be denied by the norm and by society, because she is not only not accepting those roles given to her, she is actually actively intervening in them. The criminal procedure in Iran basically sees homosexuality as a crime, and punishment is meted out to LGBT. Death punishment is meted out to them. The government looks on the issue based on Shia religion. There is no difference if there is rape or there is consensual sex. There is not a modern approach based on medicine, based on psychology, based on humanity. Homosexuality is not treated in any such manner by the government. LGBT people, because of fear of Islamic punishment, usually go into forced marriage. They usually are forced into marriage with someone from opposite sex. For them, because of their sexual identity, this is torture, this is gradual death. Within LGBT people are those who, because of wanting to enjoy a right to live, a minimum of security, go through surgery to change their sexuality. But as we know, gays and lesbians should not go through a sex change surgery. These people, after surgery, some of them kill themselves, commit suicide, some go through psychological troubles. The institutionalized violence in the Islamic Republic of Iran makes the situation very bad for transsexuals, those who have changed sexuality or need to. Why? Let me give you an example. There are many queers who have gone through suicide because of legal pressures, because of social pressures, because of breaking their most basic human rights. The sex change operations in Iran are substandard. They do lack medical standards. They usually lead into massive side issues. There was a documentary broadcast in the Islamic Republic of Iran TV network itself that shows some of the problems. The Human Rights Watch organization has published a statement based on 150 LGBT people in Iran. It's a very detailed report about the situation of LGBT people in Iran. Shows threats, discrimination, violence against LGBT people. There are recurring cases of arbitrary arrests, confiscation of homes, harassment in prisons. Human Rights Watch report shows that a lot of arrested homosexuals have actually been raped by the government authorities. There's a lot of legal approaches and executions even of LGBT people who go unreported. The sentences meted out. It's an lavat is the Islamic terminology used for punishment of these people. In Iran, there is no exact statistics about it's not published, so it doesn't even exist about the actual number of punishment meted to these people. Everything that is done to these people is denied. Homosexuality is seen criminal based on Islamic Sharia. It's seen as a crime, it's seen as criminal, which ultimately needs execution as punishment. There are very limited number of times where there has been official declarations on the homosexuality. For example, there was in 2003 somebody said that 2 men in Rash Central Prison in their 20s were executed. This is one of the very limited, one of the very rare occasions where it was openly declared that they were executed because of homosexuality. This is in 2001. The PR of Khuzestan province declared that 3 people had been killed in Khuzestan, had been executed based on Islamic Penal Code, the Article 108, which defines lavat, and Article 110 says that if sex lavat is actually done by entry into the body, it deserves execution. Rudabe was a lesbian, another one, who was well known for having been fired and then persecuted by the security part of his department, she finally had to leave Iran. Queers and LGBT people in Iran, as I said, they are seen as sick or deviants. Their families usually push them into shock therapies, into psychotherapies. As we all know, the educational institutions are held reservedly by the government, and the government has an inhumane approach in this question. We have seen that some people have been sent to madhouses. Shock therapies has been done on LGBT people. One of them was Mahnaz Ghezelloo, who is a blogger, a gay blogger, who currently lives in Netherlands. He has gone through shock therapy. He has lost his family and was held in a madhouse for a while. In Iran, even though the sex change surgeries is legal for transsexual people, because of the lack of adequate social and psychological support, this sex change surgery usually leads into psychological and health problems for transsexuals. Iranian law also does not recognize the right of those transsexuals who do not want to go through sex change surgery. As you know, in modern countries like Sweden, if a person considers him or herself transgender, is not forced to do sex change surgery. After gaining a new identity, he can get new identity documents that recognize him as trans. There are also concerns and worries about forced sex change surgeries based on family pressure, based on government pressure. Queers who, based on punishment and penal code in Islam, are seen as criminal because of the culture that inhuman culture that Islamic government in Iran propagates, are sometimes seen as discriminated or harassed by their own families or by wider society. Sometimes they're forced to flee Iran and ask for refugee status in other countries. In order to gain refugee status, they usually go to Turkey. And unfortunately, even there, they usually go through discrimination, through violence. Transsexual individuals who need medical care, they need hormone therapy or such, but they cannot afford it. This is a very, very, very serious issue that can lead to their death. We did have a question of an Iranian refugee in Turkey who unfortunately died because of this in Iran. Problems of refugee gays and LGBT and queer people in Turkey, those who are waiting to be sent to a third country, are live in the most despicable conditions. LGBT people go through a lot of hardships and indescribable problems to leave Iran. They accept unimaginable risks, even risk of their life. And they are forced to pay everything, to pay for their daily expenditures, for their medicines. They usually have to work in very hard employment, working at least 12 hours a day without insurance. They don't get any benefits. They can be fired at the employer's discretion at any moment, or be refused pay. The condition of these kind of LGBT people are inhumane, are hard, are indescribable. This shows that people. Just imagine what goes on in these people in Islamic Republic of Iran, that they're ready to accept such conditions in Turkey just to flee. When gay people leave Iran for a variety of reasons, are faced with huge financial difficulties in Turkey. In addition, even though Turkey had better, more progressive legislation compared to Iran and is more secure for gays in Iran, but my own eyewitness accounts and other reports show that LGBT people, based on my own life in Iran, when I was back in Iran, and based on my own relations with people and based on my own eyewitness account, I can give you some reports of the situation of gays and lesbians in Iran. Case 1. I had a personal interview with an arrestee who's currently in Turkey and who does not want to describe their name. It would say that in prison, this person went through beatings, through torture, through different physical harassments. They were forced to hide their genitals, were mocked, he was compared to women together with others, and were raped. Second case, I'm talking about a gay student who is currently studying in Turkey, studying physics engineering. He was actually expelled from university. And there was a friend, Bahar would say that she would throw acid on his face, and this is why he ran away. Bahar, his girlfriend, who tried 3 times to go join him in Turkey, was raped after the first attempt. Third case, Masoud, a gay and student activist who was shot in 2009 movement. The bullet was in his body for a long time, but he survived. In a private hospital in Iran, he could take his bullet out in a surgery. He says himself, and his friends testify that I have personally talked to these people, that there are still effects because it came from his lungs were heavily harmed because of the bullet. His father threatens him with turning him to the government because of his sexual tendency. That's why he fled to Turkey. He's currently a refugee in Turkey. He has huge lung problems and cannot work and has serious problems in winning his bread. As far as I know, until last week he was living in a tent in a park. Case study 4, Nastaran, a lesbian who used to be a futsal coach in Iran. Because of the revealing of her sexual identity and because of the discrimination that exists in the sport sphere as well, she was expelled from her job as a futsal manager. She was harassed. She was threatened with arrest. Because of the difficulties she also unfortunately found in her family, she finally was forced to leave Iran. And at the end, in conclusion, I want to thank everybody for their attention, and I hope that the sexual minority issues in Iran and LGBT in Iran, because of all that they go through, including the risk of execution, I hope that with gatherings, with reports, with wider struggles, the human rights obstruction that these people go through can be disseminated and this can come to a wider attention. Thank you very much. This is it.